The millionaire was used to controlling everything until he met the author of his favorite book, and what she did turned his world upside down. What happens when a man who times every second of his life meets a woman who lives by improvising? In today's video, Archer Vance is going to find out that not even all his money can hide his biggest secret, a forbidden passion. But before we start the story, leave your like and tell me, have you ever fallen for someone who was your opposite? Enjoy the story. Look at what you did. Archer Vance's voice came out low, controlled, the kind of tone he used when he was about to fire someone. Coffee ran down his suit, dripping onto the elevator floor. The woman in front of him held the empty cup with impressive calm. She looked at the mess, then at his face, and did something no one ever did to Archer Vance. She smiled. If it makes you feel any better, you look a little more human now. Archer blinked. Once, twice. His brain, trained to process million-dollar contracts in seconds, simply froze. Who was this woman, and why wasn't she apologizing? Do you have any idea how much this suit costs? She tilted her head, pretending to think. I don't know, but I bet it has more personality now than it did before. I have a meeting in exactly 8 minutes, he said, checking the watch on his wrist. A meeting that can decide the future of 300 employees. And now I'm going to walk in, looking like I lost a battle to a coffee machine. How dramatic, she replied, rolling her eyes. You could just take off the jacket. Take off the jacket? Archer repeated, like she had suggested he walk into the meeting in his underwear. I don't take off the jacket, ever. She crossed her arms, clearly amused. Even if it's on fire? I put out the fire? With the jacket still on? With the jacket still on. The elevator passed the 25th floor. Archer tried to wipe the stain with his hand, which only made it worse. Now it looked like he had fought the coffee and lost in a humiliating way. You know you're spreading it more, right? She pointed out. I know what I'm doing. You clearly don't. Archer stopped rubbing and stared at her. She had the kind of look that always seemed to be holding a funny secret. She was the exact opposite of everything Archer knew. You're not going to apologize? He asked. For what? For the coffee, on my suit, that you spilled. She seemed to consider the question with exaggerated seriousness. Technically, you bumped into me when you walked into the elevator like you owned it, which, now that I think about it, maybe you do. But still, you're the one who caused the first collision bump into you. Yes, you did. I stepped into the elevator, running over everything in your way. Archer opened his mouth to respond, but realized he had no argument. He had walked in while staring at his phone, answering emails, doing mental math for the meeting. It was possible, just possible, that he hadn't paid attention to who was standing in front of him. But admitting that was out of the question. Even so, he said, a polite person would apologize. A polite person doesn't enter elevators like a tractor in a suit. The elevator reached the 30th floor. The doors opened. Archer didn't move, neither did she. Isn't this your floor? She asked. It is, and you're not getting out? I am. Neither of them moved. You're waiting for me to apologize, she concluded. I'm waiting for a minimum level of civility. She stepped forward into his personal space in a way that made Archer instinctively lean back. She was shorter than him, but somehow in that moment she seemed to fill the entire elevator. Listen, you pressed and polished robot, she said, with a smile that was half amusement, half challenge. I'm not apologizing for an accident you caused. And you know why? Why? Because you need to learn that not everything in the world works the way you want. Sometimes coffee spills, sometimes meetings run late, sometimes life just happens, and all you can do is change your shirt and keep going. She patted his shoulder, right on top of the coffee stain, and walked out of the elevator. Have a great meeting. Tractor in a suit, she said without looking back. The doors closed before Archer could respond. He stood there, alone, with a ruined suit and something strange happening in his chest. It wasn't anger, even though it should have been. It wasn't humiliation, even though it would have made sense. It was something he couldn't identify, like a puzzle piece that didn't fit anywhere. Archer Vance was 34. He had built an empire before turning 30. He controlled companies, investments, people. His productivity app scheduled every minute of his day, from the time he woke up to the exact number of steps he should take before going to sleep. He controlled everything, but in that elevator for 2 minutes and 43 seconds, an unknown woman holding a cup of coffee had done something no one ever managed to do. She had taken him out of control. And worst of all, Archer couldn't stop thinking about her. He looked at the stain on his suit, then at the closed elevator doors, and muttered to himself, "Who was that woman?" He still didn't know, but he was going to find out. And when he did, Archer Vance would make sure she understood exactly who she had gotten herself involved with. What he didn't realize was that spilled coffee was only the beginning. The first domino in a chain that would knock down, piece by piece, the perfectly organized life he had built. Because sometimes chaos doesn't ask for permission. It simply walks into the elevator, spills coffee on your suit, and leaves smiling. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Archer didn't remember a single word. His eyes went back to the stain on his suit every 5 minutes, as if the coffee had come to life and was mocking him. When he finally returned to his office, the first thing he did was take off his jacket and throw it in the trash. Then he pulled the jacket back out. Then he threw it in again. "Mr. Vance?" His assistant Margaret's voice came through the intercom. "Is everything okay? The motion sensor detected unusual activity in your office." "I'm exercising," he lied. "With your jacket?" Archer looked at the jacket in the trash, then at the intercom, then at the jacket again. "Margaret, can you turn off the motion sensor in my office?" "Sir, you installed that sensor yourself. You said it would increase your productivity by 12%. Well, now it's reducing my sanity by 80%. Silence on the other end. "I'll turn it off, sir." Archer spent the rest of the day trying to focus. He reviewed contracts, approved budgets, mentally fired 3 people who annoyed him in meetings. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw that woman's smile. The way she had patted his shoulder. The absolute calm while his world collapsed in the form of coffee. Stiff robot. Who did she think she was? That night, alone in his penthouse apartment, Archer did something no one in the business world would ever suspect. He picked up a book, not just any book. The 4th volume of Hearts of Asphalt, the romance series he had been reading in secret since he was 28. The books were locked in a safe behind an abstract painting he pretended to like. The safe code was more complicated than the password to his bank accounts. Archer settled onto the couch, opened the book, and felt his shoulders relax for the first time all day. That was his secret, his refuge, the only place where he could simply feel. Then he saw the announcement on the last page. Coming soon, the final volume of Hearts of Asphalt, the definitive farewell of Daniel and Elena. Definitive farewell. Archer read the line 3 times. He opened his phone and searched. He found an interview with the author, L.J. Rose, confirming that the last book would have a tragic ending. That Daniel, the main character, wouldn't survive. He stood still, staring at the screen, feeling something he hadn't felt since... never. Panic. He told the phone. No, you can't do that." Archer got up and started pacing around the living room. His productivity app beeped, reminding him he should be asleep in exactly 42 minutes. He ignored it. The app beeped again. He threw the phone onto the couch. "Daniel can't end like that," he muttered. He went through everything. The betrayal in the 2nd book, the accident in the 3rd, finding Elena again. He deserves a happy ending. One rational part of Archer's brain pointed out that he was having an emotional breakdown over a fictional character. The other part told the rational part to be quiet. The next morning, Archer arrived at the office with a mission. During the weekly strategy meeting, while his directors talked about acquisitions and mergers, he quietly searched on his phone. Lighthouse Publishing, the company behind Hearts of Asphalt. The results were troubling. The publisher was in serious financial trouble, mounting debt, falling sales. The last book in the series could be the publisher's last book too. "Mr. Vance?" The CFO's voice pulled him out of his thoughts. "Do you agree with the proposal?" Archer had no idea what proposal they were talking about. "I agree," he said. "But first I want to discuss a new acquisition." "A new acquisition? It's not on the agenda." "It is now." He projected the Lighthouse Publishing information onto the screen. His directors looked confused. "A book publisher?" the marketing director asked. "Mr. Vance, we work with technology, apps, innovation. What would we do with a publisher?" "Portfolio diversification," Archer replied, using his "Don't question my decisions" voice. "But this publisher mainly releases romance novels," the CFO pointed out, clearly trying not to laugh. "Romance, sir. Love stories." So what is that?" The man looked at his colleagues for support. "You've always said romance novels were a waste of time. At the last conference, you said reading fiction was entertainment for people without clear goals." Archer remembered that line. He was proud of that line. Now it was coming back to haunt him. "I was being strategic?" He improvised, building a public narrative. "Behind the scenes, I always knew the publishing market had potential." The directors exchanged looks that clearly said, "Our boss has lost it." "Sir," Margaret tried, watching from the doorway, "maybe we should review the numbers more carefully before." "Buy the publisher," Archer cut in. "Today." "Today?" "Today. Now. Before lunch, if possible." The silence in the room was the kind that comes before major disasters. "And one more thing," Archer continued. "I want a meeting with their main author, L.J. Rose, in person." "For what?" the marketing director asked. Archer thought of Daniel, of Elena, of the tragic ending he could not accept. "Editorial strategy," he said. "We're going to discuss the future of the series." No one looked convinced, but no one dared to disagree. That night, alone again, Archer opened the productivity app and logged the acquisition. The system calculated the expected return and displayed red numbers. Likely loss. Decision not recommended. He approved it anyway. For the first time in his life, Archer Vance had made a business decision based on feelings. And the strangest part was that he did not regret it. The app beeped one last time before he fell asleep. "Meeting confirmed. L.J. Rose, Friday, 2 p.m. Archer smiled. At last, he would meet the person responsible for his favorite characters. He would convince her to change the ending. He would save Daniel. What he didn't know was that L.J. Rose had already spilled coffee on him once, and she was about to spill a lot more. The safe behind the abstract painting held 27 books. Archer knew the exact number because he counted them every week, like a dragon checking its treasure. No one could know about it. No one. The morning after the decision to buy the publisher, Archer gave an interview to a business magazine. The reporter, a guy too young to wear a bow tie, asked about Archer's reading habits. "I read reports," Archer replied, adjusting his posture. "Market analysis, financial projections, content that adds value. And fiction? Novels?" Archer forced a laugh that sounded almost natural. "Novels are entertainment for people who have nothing to do. Made-up stories about made-up feelings. A waste of time." "Interesting," the reporter said, taking notes. "So you've never read a novel?" "Never." The lie came so easily that Archer almost believed it. Later at the office, Margaret walked in with a stack of documents. "The Lighthouse Publishing acquisition has been approved," she reported. "Congratulations, sir. You now own a romance publisher." "It's a strategic investment." "Of course," Margaret agreed, in a tone that suggested she didn't believe it at all. "The meeting with L.J. Rose is confirmed for Friday." The author accepted, but her assistant said she didn't seem very enthusiastic. "She doesn't need to be enthusiastic, she needs to be present." Margaret hesitated at the door. "Sir, can I ask something?" "Yes. Why the specific interest in this author? The publisher has other writers. Some even sell more." Archer thought of Daniel, of Elena, of the ending that could not happen. "Editorial strategy," he repeated the same line from the meeting. "You already said that yesterday." "Because it's still true." Margaret left, clearly unconvinced. Archer waited for the door to close, then opened the secret drawer in his desk and pulled out the 4th volume of Asphalt Hearts. That one he didn't keep at home. That one had to stay close. He reread the last chapter for the 3rd time that week. Daniel was at a turning point. Elena was gone. The dreams he built seemed to be collapsing. Everything pointed to him losing what he loved most. But in the last paragraph, a letter arrived. A hope appeared. To be continued in the next volume, the last one, the farewell. Archer closed the book with more force than necessary. "You can't end it like this," he murmured to the pages. "Not after everything." The intercom beeped. "Mr. Vance? Your video call with the Asian investors starts in 5 minutes." Archer hid the book in the drawer so fast he almost trapped his fingers. "I'm coming." The video conference lasted 2 hours. At some point, an investor asked about the publishing house acquisition. Archer explained with numbers, charts, and projections. He talked about the book market, consumer trends, and the potential for streaming adaptations. He didn't mention Daniel. He didn't mention Elena. He didn't mention that he was buying an entire company to save two fictional characters from a sad ending. Some secrets were too big even for boardrooms. That night, at home, Archer did something he had never done before. He looked up L.J. Rose. The information was scarce. The author protected her privacy fiercely. Few public photos, all from behind or with her face partly covered. Rare interviews, always in writing, never on video. It was as if she existed only on the pages of her books. Archer found a quote from her on a literary blog. "I write endings that need to exist, not endings people want. The truth of the story matters more than the reader's comfort." He read the sentence 5 times. "The truth of the story," he repeated. "What truth? Daniel and Elena together is the truth." 4 books building that relationship. You can't just destroy everything at the end. His imaginary dog didn't answer because Archer didn't have a dog. He had a minimalist apartment, designer furniture, and a silence that sometimes felt too heavy. He went back to the safe, opened it, looked at the 27 books arranged in reading order. Novels, all of them. Secrets printed on paper. If anyone found out, his reputation would be ruined. Archer Vance, the man who called novels a waste of time, had a hidden collection. Archer Vance, who mocked sentimentality in meetings, cried in chapter 17 of the 3rd book of Hearts of Asphalt. Archer Vance, who controlled everything, was buying a publishing house because he couldn't stand the idea of an unhappy ending for characters who didn't even exist. The irony was so big, he almost laughed. Almost. He picked up the first volume of the series and flipped to the dedication. "For everyone who has loved in silence." Archer had read that line dozens of times. But that night, it felt different, more personal, as if the author knew something about him that he didn't even know himself. The productivity app beeped. Reminder, meeting with L.J. Rose in 3 days. Prepare arguments, define strategy. Archer started typing a plan, negotiation points, financial offers, contract pressure, everything calculated to make the author give in. But as he typed, a doubt grew. What if she didn't give in? What if L.J. Rose was as stubborn as her characters? Archer shook his head and kept typing. It didn't matter who she was. It didn't matter what she wanted. He had bought the publishing house. He had the power. He would get what he wanted. He always did. The plan was ready. The arguments were solid. The strategy was flawless. But deep down, in a part of himself he pretended didn't exist, Archer felt something was wrong. That changing someone else's story was a line that shouldn't be crossed. That too much control could destroy exactly what he was trying to protect. He ignored the feeling. After all, it was just a book, just an ending, just an unknown author who would probably give in at the first sign of pressure. What could go wrong? 3 days later, Archer would find out the answer. And it would come in the form of brown eyes, an ironic smile, and a cup of coffee he would never forget. The meeting room door opened, and Archer Vance's world fell apart in slow motion. It was her, the woman from the elevator, the one from the coffee shop. "Good afternoon," she said, holding out her hand. "Lily Jones. But you can call me L.J. Rose." Archer didn't take her hand. He couldn't move, he couldn't blink. He couldn't do anything at all except stand there like a wax figure in a museum of bad decisions. "Mr. Vance?" Margaret called, worried. "Are you okay?" "He's great." Lily answered for him, pulling out a chair and sitting down like she owned the place. "He's just processing." Businessmen tend to freeze when they run into unexpected variables. Archer finally found his voice. You're L.J. Rose." "I am." "You spilled coffee on my suit." "Technically, you bumped into me. But yes, there was coffee involved." Margaret looked from one to the other, clearly lost. "Do you know each other?" "No," Archer said. "Yes," Lily said at the same time. The silence that followed was awkward. Archer took a deep breath, adjusted his tie, and tried to regain control. He was Archer Vance. He did not get nervous because of authors. "Can we begin?" he said, sitting at the head of the table. "Sure, suit-wearing tractor. I'm curious why you bought my publishing house." "It's not your publishing house. It's mine now." "The walls are yours. The stories are still mine." Archer opened a folder with documents. Contracts, clauses, numbers. His safe territory, Miss Jones. "Miss Jones," he repeated, ignoring the correction. "I acquired Lighthouse Publishing for strategic reasons. One of those reasons involves the Asphalt Hearts series." Lily tilted her head, studying him. Did you read my books? The question was a trap. Archer knew it was a trap. I did a market analysis. That doesn't answer my question. It answers enough. It answers nothing. Lily smiled. Did you read them or not? Archer thought about the 27 books in the safe, the nights rereading chapters, the hidden tears. That's irrelevant. It's the most relevant thing in this meeting. He decided to change strategy. What matters is this. Archer pushed a document toward her. The contract gives me the right to approve significant editorial decisions. The ending of the last book is a significant editorial decision. Lily did not even look at the paper. And what do you want with the ending? I want it changed. Changed how? Archer hesitated. Saying I want Daniel and Elena to end up together and happy sounded too childish. I want a more optimistic ending. Optimistic? Lily repeated, like it was a joke. You bought an entire publishing house to ask for a happy ending? I bought a publishing house to ensure an adequate return. Sad endings sell less. That's a lie, and you know it. Archer knew it, but he was not there for sales. He was there for Daniel. The contract gives me authority, he insisted. The contract gives you paper with words. My story isn't on paper. It's here. Lily pointed to her own head. And here, she pointed to her heart. You can buy publishing houses, buildings, entire countries, but you can't buy what I feel about my characters. Everything has a price. That sentence explains a lot about you. The tension rose. Margaret, still at the door, looked like she wanted to be anywhere else on the planet. Miss Jones, Archer tried again. I am offering an opportunity. Resources, marketing, worldwide promotion. In exchange for what? In exchange for a small change to the ending. Small. Lily stood up and walked to the window. She was silent for a few seconds. Do you know what your problem is, Archer Vance? I don't have problems. You have so many you can't even see them. She turned to face him. You think control is power, that money buys anything, that emotions are variables to be calculated. Emotions are variables to be calculated, and that's exactly why you're alone. The blow hit hard. Archer felt it, but kept his expression neutral. My personal life is not up for discussion. It's always up for discussion. You just don't notice. She went back to the table and picked up her bag. The answer is no. You didn't even consider. I did. The answer is still no. I can make things difficult, and I can turn your life into a public relations nightmare. Imagine the headline, Billionaire tries to censor an author and force a happy ending. Archer imagined it. It was not pretty. That's blackmail. That's a balance of power. You should like it. She walked to the door, but stopped before leaving. You know what's funny? What? You bought an entire publishing house because of a book you clearly love. But you can't admit it, not even to yourself. Lily smiled. When you figure out why that ending bothers you so much, come find me. Then we'll have a real conversation. The door closed behind her. Archer was alone in the room, with useless documents spread across the table. He had lost the negotiation. He never lost negotiations. But the worst part wasn't that. The worst part was that someone had looked right through him, had seen something he hid even from himself, and instead of anger, all Archer felt was curiosity. Who was Lily Jones? And why could she disarm him so easily? After the disastrous meeting, Lily Jones called Archer Vance's office. He answered on the first ring. Not because he was eager. Obviously not. He was just near the phone. By coincidence. Mr. Vance, Miss Jones on line 2. Margaret announced. Transfer her. Do you want me to stay on the line to take notes? No. Are you sure? Because last time, Margaret. Transferring, sir. A click. Then her voice. Suit-wearing tractor. Did you miss me? Archer gripped the phone harder than necessary. Miss Jones, I assume you're calling to accept my offer. Wrong assumption. I'm calling to make a counteroffer. I'm not interested in counteroffers. You are. You just don't know it yet. Archer hated when she talked like that, like she knew things about him that even he didn't know. Talk. In person. Tomorrow. There's a coffee shop downtown, 3 blocks from your building. It's called Bean There. See you at 10. I don't go to coffee shops. You'll go to this one. Why would I do that? Because you want to change my ending, and this is the only way to do it. The line went silent. Archer stared at his phone for at least 30 seconds. Then he called Margaret. Cancel my meeting tomorrow at 10. Which meeting, sir? Any meeting I have. The next day, Archer walked into Bean Warner. They're feeling completely out of place. The place was small, cozy, and full of people who clearly didn't have important meetings to get to. There were couches, plants, soft music, everything he avoided. Lily was at a table in the corner, with an open book and a steaming cup. She looked up when he approached. "You came. Did you doubt it?" "A little." She pointed to the chair across from her. "Sit. Order something. They make an incredible cappuccino. I don't drink cappuccino." "What do you drink?" "Black coffee. No sugar." "What a surprise." Lily rolled her eyes. "I bet you also eat salad with no dressing and think black and white movies are too exciting." Archer sat down, ignoring the jab. "You said you had a counteroffer. Straight to the point. I like that." She closed the book. "But first, a question." "Go ahead." "Why were you in that elevator that day?" "I work in the building." "No. I mean, why that specific elevator, the one on the east wing?" "You own the whole building. You probably have a private elevator with classical music and champagne." Archer frowned. "The private elevator was under maintenance." "Oh, so it was fate," Lily smiled. "And I was there because I went to visit a friend who works at the accounting firm on the 12th floor. She had just ended a relationship and needed moral support." "Is that relevant?" "Everything is relevant. You just don't understand yet." A waitress came over and Archer ordered black coffee. Lily ordered another cappuccino and a slice of chocolate cake. "You shouldn't eat that," Archer said, without thinking. "Why?" "It's not healthy." "So what?" "What do you mean, so what?" "So what if it's not healthy?" Lily looked genuinely confused. "It tastes good. It makes me happy." "What's the problem?" Archer opened his mouth to answer but realized he didn't have a logical response. His nutrition app always said sugar was the enemy, but the app didn't mention happiness. "None," he muttered. "Great. Now the counteroffer." Lily leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "The publisher is in financial trouble. You know it. I know it. If you pull your investment now, we'll shut down in 3 months. That's your problem, not mine. It's our problem, because if the publisher closes, the last book won't be published, and you won't know the ending." Archer swallowed hard. "I can buy the rights. You can, but I can refuse to sell, and I can spend the next 10 years without writing a single word just to annoy you." "You would do that? Want to take that risk?" The coffee arrived. Archer took a sip, using the time to think. Lily was right. She had a card he couldn't ignore. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand why stories matter, not as products, as human experiences." "And how do you plan to do that?" Lily smiled. The kind of smile that comes right before a dangerous idea. 1 week. 1 week of what? 1 week without technology, without your productivity app, without a timed routine, without reports, spreadsheets, or meetings scheduled down to the second. Archer almost spit out his coffee. "That's insane. It's an experience. It's impossible." "It's 1 week. I have a company to run." "You have people to run your company. Delegate." Archer shook his head. "Why would I do something so absurd?" Lily leaned back in her chair. "Because you want to change my ending. And I'll only consider changing it if you prove you understand what you're asking for." "I understand perfectly. You understand numbers. You understand contracts. You understand profit and loss." She stared at him. "But you don't understand why Daniel has to lose Elena. And until you do, I won't change a single comma." The silence between them lasted almost a full minute. "If I do this," Archer said slowly, "will you change the ending? If you do it for real, honestly, I'll consider it." Consider is not a guarantee. Guarantees don't exist in real life, only in your contracts. Archer finished his coffee, ordered another, drank half of it. "What are the rules?" Lily looked surprised for a second. Then she opened her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I knew you were going to ask that." She handed him the paper. "It's all there." Archer read in silence. Rule 1. No electronic devices for 7 days. Phone, tablet, computer, smartwatch. Nothing. Rule 2. No fixed schedule. Wake up when your body wants, sleep when you're tired, eat when you're hungry. Rule 3. 1 activity a day chosen by Lily. No complaints. No questions in advance. Rule 4. At the end of the week, an honest conversation about what he learned. "This is torture," Archer said. "This is living." "Same thing." Lily laughed. A real laugh, not the polite laughs he heard at business dinners. "You're funnier than you pretend to be, you know that?" "I'm not funny." "You are. You just don't let anyone see it." Archer looked at the paper again. It was crazy. It was completely out of his control. It was everything he hated, but it was also the only way to save Daniel. If I do this and you don't change the ending, I'm going to sue you for emotional damages. Emotional damages? You? Lily pretended to be shocked. I thought you didn't have emotions. I have stock shares. It's almost the same thing. She reached her hand across the table. So we have a deal? Archer hesitated. His brain screamed at him not to accept. His logic begged him to stand up and leave. But something stronger kept him there. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe it was something else he still couldn't name. He shook her hand. 1 week. 1 week. And then you change the ending. Then I'll consider it, Lily corrected. But I have a feeling you'll change your mind before I do. Unlikely. We'll see. She let go of his hand and smiled again. It starts tomorrow. Be ready to hand over your phone at 8 in the morning. Where? At my apartment. I'll send the address. On my phone that you're going to confiscate. That's why I'm sending it today, she winked. Enjoy your last night with your app. Say goodbye nicely. You two seem to have an intense relationship. Archer stood up, not quite sure what he had just agreed to. Let's try to get along. You're predictable. That's why we're going to get along so well. He left the coffee shop with the folded paper in his pocket and a strange feeling in his chest. He had just handed control of his life to a woman who spilled coffee on him and didn't even apologize. What could go wrong? The answer would arrive in less than 24 hours, and it would be much worse than anything his productivity app could have predicted. Archer's phone was confiscated at 8 in the morning. By 8:03, he was already having an existential crisis. What do I do with my hands? He asked, staring at his own fingers like they were strange objects. Lily put the phone in a shoebox and smiled. You can use them? That doesn't make sense. Welcome to the week. Lily's apartment was the opposite of Archer's apartment. Small, colorful, full of books stacked in places where books shouldn't be. There were plants in the windows, paintings on the walls, and an organized mess he couldn't figure out. And there was a dog. This is Mr. Darcy, Lily introduced. Archer looked down. A basset hound stared back at him with sad eyes and ears that dragged on the floor. The dog looked like he had given up on life at least 3 years ago. Why is his name Mr. Darcy? Because he's proud, antisocial, and it takes him forever to show affection. Lily shrugged. He reminded me of someone. I'm not antisocial. You have an app that schedules your human interactions. That's efficiency. Mr. Darcy yawned, clearly bored with the argument. Then he walked up to Archer, sniffed his shoe, and stepped away with visible disapproval. He doesn't like me, Archer said. He doesn't like anyone. You two will get along. The first activity of the day was simple. Do nothing. What do you mean, do nothing? Archer asked for the 5th time. Sit. Look out the window. Exist. That's not an activity. It's the hardest activity you'll do this week. Archer sat on the couch. He looked out the window. It lasted exactly 47 seconds. Has a minute passed? Not even close. How much time is left? You don't have a watch. That's the point. Archer stood up, sat down again, crossed his legs, uncrossed them, tapped his fingers on his knee, stopped, started again. Mr. Darcy watched him from the corner of the room with an expression that clearly said, pathetic. Your dog is judging me. Archer said, he judges everyone. It's part of the charm. After an eternity that was probably 20 minutes, Lily announced it was time for lunch. Let's order food, she said. Great. What's healthy around here? Pizza. Pizza isn't healthy. Pizza is happiness in circle form. Case closed. The pizza arrived half an hour later. Lily opened the box in the middle of the living room, sat on the floor, and started eating. What are you doing? Archer asked, horrified. Eating. On the floor? On the floor. Why? Because it's fun. She took a bite. Sit here. I don't sit on the floor. Why? Because. Archer stopped. Why exactly? Because it's not appropriate. Appropriate for who? He had no answer. Lily patted the space next to her. Come on, the floor doesn't bite. Archer looked at the floor, looked at the couch, looked at Lily chewing pizza with a happiness he didn't understand. Slowly, like he was disarming a dangerous situation, he sat down on the floor. There, he said. I'm on the floor. And how do you feel? Uncomfortable. Perfect. Grab a slice. He did. He took a bite. The pizza was good. Very good, actually. But he was not going to admit that. It's acceptable, he said. It's the best pizza in the city, and you know it. Mr. Darcy, drawn by the smell, came closer and sat beside Archer. The dog looked at the pizza, looked at Archer, looked at the pizza again. "No," Archer said. Mr. Darcy tilted his head. "No," Archer repeated. The dog kept staring. "He won't stop," Lily informed him. "Dogs don't eat pizza. This one does. It's not healthy. So what?" Before Archer could answer, Mr. Darcy lunged forward, stole the slice from his hand, and ran off. Or rather, trotted away slowly. Because basset hounds don't run. "He stole my pizza," Archer said in disbelief. "He does that." "And you didn't train him?" "I tried. He ignored me. We reached an agreement." "What kind of agreement?" "He pretends to obey me, and I pretend to believe him." Archer stood up to recover the pizza, but Mr. Darcy had already disappeared behind the couch. Satisfied chewing sounds came from back there. "That dog is complicated. He just knows what he wants. You should learn from him." The afternoon got even worse. Lily decided Archer needed a creative experience and put him in front of paper to draw. "I don't draw," he protested. "Now you do." "I don't know how to draw." "No one knows at first. That's why it's called learning." Archer stared at the blank page. He picked up the pencil. He froze. "What do I draw?" "Whatever you want." "But what do you want me to draw?" "Whatever you want." "That's not a clear instruction." "Welcome to art." He drew a square. Then he looked at the square. "What is that?" Lily asked. "A square." "Why a square?" "Because squares are efficient." Lily pulled the paper away and put another one in front of him. "Again, this time, don't think." "I always think." "That's the problem." Archer tried again and again. On the fifth attempt, he drew something that vaguely looked like a dog. "It's Mr. Darcy," he said, surprised at himself. Lily looked at the drawing, looked at the real dog, who had come back and was now sleeping on the rug. "It's awful," she said. "I know. But it's honest. It's a start." That night, lying on Lily's couch because apparently he slept there now, Archer stared at the ceiling. Without his phone, the silence was deafening. Without the app, he didn't know what time it was. Without his routine, every minute seemed to carry a different weight. Mr. Darcy jumped onto the couch and settled at Archer's feet. "Get down," Archer said. The dog didn't move. "Get down," he repeated. Mr. Darcy sighed and closed his eyes. Archer gave up. He had lost an argument to a dog. And the worst part was that it didn't bother him as much as it should have. The week was only on the first day, and Archer already felt like something inside him was starting to crack. Archer found the tablet on the fourth day. It was hidden under a pile of books in Lily's office, forgotten like an old toy. He knew he shouldn't touch it. He knew it was against the rules, but his hands were already turning it on before his brain could protest. "Just 5 minutes," he muttered to himself, "just to check if everything is fine." The tablet was old and slow. It took forever to load. Archer stared at the screen with the anxiety of a man in the desert finding water. There was no internet. Of course wasn't. Lily wasn't careless. But Archer had downloaded an offline version of his productivity app months earlier. For emergencies. And this was definitely an emergency. He opened the app. The familiar screen appeared. Charts, lists, numbers, order. Archer felt his shoulders relax for the first time in 4 days. "Yes," he whispered. "This makes sense." He started checking his overdue tasks, missed meetings, unanswered emails, the chaos his absence had created. Then an old notification appeared. Reminder, parents' wedding anniversary. Call. Archer froze. The notification was 3 years old. He had never deleted it. He had never been able to. His parents had divorced 6 months after that reminder. A 32-year marriage collapsing into signed papers and divided furniture. Archer found out through an email. A cold, formal email, as if they were announcing a change of address. He didn't call on that anniversary. He was too busy. He had an important merger. A meeting that couldn't wait. There was always something that couldn't wait. "What are you doing?" Lily's voice came from the doorway. Archer almost dropped the tablet. "Nothing." "That's a lie." She crossed the room and pulled the device from his hands. She looked at the screen, saw the app open, the old notifications still visible. Her expression changed. Her usual amusement disappeared. "You can't do it, can you?" she said, her voice low. "I just needed to check." "Check what?" "If the world still exists without you controlling every second?" "That's not it." "It's exactly that." Lily tossed the tablet onto the couch and crossed her arms. 4 days. You made it 4 days before you broke. I didn't break. I just cheated. The word hung in the air between them. Archer wanted to defend himself, but he couldn't find the arguments. You turn everything into numbers, Lily continued. Feelings, relationships, people. Everything becomes data in your app. Everything becomes something to control. Organization isn't control. For you, it's the same thing. Mr. Darcy walked into the room, sensed the tension, and immediately lay down in the corner, pretending he didn't exist. Even the dog knew this conversation was serious. What was in that notification? Lily asked. Nothing. Archer, it's none of your business. You're in my house, living by my rules, trying to change my story. It's all my business. The silence lasted almost a minute. Archer looked at the tablet on the couch, at the notification he had never deleted. It was a reminder, he said at last. My parents' wedding anniversary. And? They got divorced. 6 months later. Lily said nothing. She waited. I didn't call that day. Archer continued, his voice lower now. I was busy. I was always busy. And then there was nothing left to call and celebrate. You blame yourself. I don't blame myself for anything. You keep a reminder from 3 years ago in an app you check every day. That's blaming yourself. Archer stood up and went to the window. He couldn't look at her. My father once said I was too efficient to be human, he said, staring down at the city. He said I treated everything like business, even people. And you? I said efficiency was a strength, not a flaw. And what do you think now? Archer didn't answer. Lily stepped closer and stood beside him at the window. Do you know why I write stories? She asked. Why? Because stories are messy. Characters make the wrong choices. Relationships fall apart. Endings aren't always happy. She looked at him. And that's okay, because that's how life works. I don't like how life works. Nobody does, but hiding in apps and numbers doesn't change it. It just delays it. Archer finally turned to face her. What do you want me to do? I want you to keep going, but with one condition. What is it? Tomorrow, you're going to face a real situation. No preparation, no plan, no knowing what to expect. What kind of situation? You'll find out tomorrow. That's not fair. Fairness is a concept invented by people who want to control outcomes. Lily shrugged. Do you accept it or not? Archer thought about leaving. He thought about grabbing his phone from the shoebox, calling Margaret, and going back to his organized life. But then he thought about Daniel, about Elena, about the ending he wanted to change. And he thought about something else. He thought about the notification from 3 years ago. The phone call he never made. The marriage he didn't save. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe he needed to stop running. I accept, he said. Why? Because, he hesitated. Because I need to prove I can. Prove to who? Archer wasn't sure of the answer. Mr. Darcy got up from the corner, walked over to Archer and pressed his head against Archer's leg. It was the first gesture of affection the dog had shown all week. Looks like he decided to like you, Lily observed. Why now? Because you finally stopped pretending everything is fine. That night, Archer couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what would come the next day. The unprepared situation, the fear he felt and wouldn't admit. The last thing he saw before closing his eyes was Mr. Darcy asleep at his feet. And the first thing he heard in the morning was Lily's voice. Get up. We're going somewhere you've never been. Where? Lily smiled in that way that always came right before trouble. You'll find out when you get there. The place was a community center in Brooklyn. Peeling walls, plastic chairs, and the smell of cheap coffee that would make Archer's favorite barista have a nervous breakdown. What is this? Archer asked, standing at the entrance as if the floor were lava. A charity bingo night. Lily replied, pushing him inside. To raise funds for the neighborhood library. Bingo. Bingo. You brought me here to play bingo. I brought you here to live. Bingo is just the backdrop. The hall was full of people. Ladies with colorful hair. Men in local team shirts. Kids running between the tables. No one wore a suit. No one checked emails. No one seemed to have the slightest idea who Archer Vance was. It was terrifying. Sit here. Lily pointed to a table in the middle of the hall. I'm going to get the cards. The cards? Bingo cards. Try to keep up. She disappeared into the crowd. Archer was left alone, sitting on a plastic chair that creaked under his weight. A woman next to him smiled. First time? Is it that obvious? Sweetheart, you're sitting like the chair is going to explode. Archer tried to relax. The chair creaked louder. I'm Betty, the woman introduced herself. And this is my husband, Osvaldo. A man on the other side of the table raised his hand without taking his eyes off the card in front of him. He doesn't talk much, Betty explained. 53 years of marriage. We've already said everything there is to say. 53 years? Archer repeated, surprised. Yeah, the secret is pretending you don't hear half of what the other person says. Osvaldo grumbled something that sounded like agreement. Lily came back with the cards and a cup of soda. Here, you have 3 cards. When they call a number you have, mark it with this bean. A bean? A bean. She put a handful of dry beans in front of him. Archer looked at the beans like they were alien artifacts. Why beans? Because it's tradition, and because plastic chips cost money. The bingo started. A woman with a noisy microphone called the numbers with an enthusiasm Archer found impossible for that activity. B7, she shouted. Archer checked his cards. No B7. N42, still no. G58, nothing. You've got bad luck, Betty observed, marking her own card. But don't worry, luck changes. I don't believe in luck, Archer said. I believe in calculated probability. And what's the calculated probability of you winning this bingo? Archer did the math in his head. About 3%. Then you have 3% hope. That's more than a lot of people have. The game continued. Archer didn't win the first round, not the second. In the third, he was starting to relax when a voice behind him made him freeze. Wait, I know you. He turned. A middle-aged man stared at him with narrowed eyes. You're that guy. The billionaire. I saw your photo in a magazine. The entire hall seemed to go silent. Archer felt every set of eyes turn toward him. You must be mistaken, he tried. No, I'm not. Archer Vance, the productivity app guy. The one who said people who read romance novels are unproductive. Betty's eyes went wide. You said that? It was taken out of context, Archer muttered. My granddaughter reads romance, the man continued, crossing his arms. She's 16, and she's read more books than you've probably read in your whole life. I read a lot. Reports don't count. Archer searched for Lily with his eyes. She was on the other side of the hall, watching. She didn't move to help. He was alone. Look, Archer said, standing up. I didn't come here to cause trouble. Then what did you come for? Market research? To see how poor people have fun? I came to play bingo. Billionaires don't play bingo. This one does. The silence held. Archer could leave. He could call a car, go back to his penthouse, and pretend that night never happened. But something kept him there. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was stubbornness, or maybe it was the image of Lily watching from a distance, waiting to see what he would do. I said the wrong things, Archer admitted, the words coming out with difficulty. About romance, about people who read. I was being arrogant. You were, the man agreed. But I'm trying to change, that's why I'm here. Trying to change by playing bingo? Trying to change by stopping thinking I know everything. Betty let out a small laugh. Sweetheart, it took you long enough to figure that out. I know. Archer sighed. Believe me, I know. The man studied him for a moment. Then he uncrossed his arms. My granddaughter would love to know a billionaire admitted he was wrong. Can I take a picture? A picture? To prove it happened. No one will believe me. Archer almost said no. Pictures were risky. They could leak. They could become headlines. But then he looked at the room full of people who had paused their lives to help a library. People who had nothing to gain except the satisfaction of doing something good. You can take it off, he said. The photo was taken. The man shook his hand. Mrs. Betty offered him a piece of cake she had brought from home. Mr. Osvaldo stayed quiet, but gave a nod that felt like approval. The rest of the night went by fast. Archer didn't win any bingo, but he listened to stories. About children who lived far away, about jobs lost and found, about small victories that didn't show up in any financial report. At the end, when everyone was getting ready to leave, Lily came over. You stayed, she said. I did. Archer thought about the question, thought about the stories he heard, the people he met, because it was the right thing to do. Lily smiled, not her usual teasing smile, a different one, softer. You're changing, Archer Vance. Is that good? I still don't know, but it's interesting. They walked to the exit together. The night was cold, but Archer barely noticed. Something inside him had changed. The armor he had worn for years was starting to crack. And for the first time, it didn't feel so scary. But what he didn't know was that, while he was playing bingo in Brooklyn, Someone at the office had found something they shouldn't have. And by the next morning, Archer Vance's secret would no longer be a secret. Margaret called 23 times before Archer finally saw his phone. Lily had given the phone back that morning, marking the official end of the week without technology. Archer barely had time to celebrate. The moment the screen lit up, his world collapsed. "Vance, where were you?" Margaret practically yelled. "I tried to reach you in every possible way." "What happened? You need to see the emails. Now, all of them." Archer opened his inbox. He had 1,200 unread messages. The first 100 were from investors. The next 200 were from reporters. The rest was corporate panic in text form. Then he saw the headline Margaret had forwarded. "ICE billionaire melts for romance. Leak reveals Archer Vance is the biggest fan of Hearts of Asphalt." Archer stopped breathing. "How?" he asked, his voice sounding strange. "An internal email from the publisher's acquisitions team. Someone forwarded it to someone who forwarded it to someone and... Well, you know how these things work." Archer did know that was how empires fell, one click at a time. He opened the article. There were screenshots of the email, lines highlighted in yellow. Mr. Vance specifically requested a meeting with L.J. Rose due to his personal interest in the series. And worse, internal sources confirm Vance owns every volume and has reread the series multiple times. The comments under the article were merciless. "The guy who said romance was a waste of time reads romance in secret. Hypocrisy has a name." Imagine Archer Vance crying at the reunion chapter. "I can't stop laughing. Someone please make an edit of him holding the book with hard eyes." "Mr. Vance?" Margaret called. "Are you still there?" "I am. The investors want an emergency meeting. The board wants a public statement. PR wants to know if it's true. If it's true. If you really read romance novels." Archer looked at Lily, who was across the room, watching in silence. "I'll call you back," he said, and hung up. The silence between them lasted almost a full minute. "So," Lily finally said, "you're my biggest fan. This isn't funny. It's a little funny. My reputation is being destroyed." "Your reputation for what? For being a robot with no feelings?" Lily crossed her arms. "Maybe it's good for people to see you're human. Humans don't close deals. Humans don't attract investors. Humans don't run companies. Humans live. I don't have that luxury." Archer's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Social media notifications, text messages, missed calls. The whole world seemed determined to remind him of his failure. He opened one of the apps. Someone had already created a hashtag, Romantic Billionaire. It had 20,000 posts in 2 hours. There were edits of him with book covers, drawings of him hugging fictional characters, a video of a comedian imitating him reading romance in secret in the bathroom. "This is a nightmare," Archer muttered. "This is the internet," Lily corrected. "Tomorrow they'll be talking about something else. Tomorrow I may not have a company anymore." The phone rang again. This time it was the chairman of the investor board, Archer answered. "Mr. Bradley, Vance, what is going on?" "A temporary situation. I'm already handling it." "Temporary?" "The stock dropped 3% in 2 hours. Our partners are calling, worried. People are asking if you've lost your mind." "I haven't lost my mind." "Then why did you buy a romance publisher? Why are you involved with that author?" "It's a strategic investment. It's a joke, and you are the joke." The line went silent. Archer stared at the phone. "He hung up on me," he said, almost in disbelief. "People do that when they're afraid," Lily observed. "Afraid of what?" "Of finding out their leader has feelings. It's terrifying to people who think emotions are weakness." Archer started pacing around the room. His brain ran through options, strategies, exits. "I need to fix this," he said. "Fix it how?" "By controlling the narrative. Showing it was a misunderstanding." "But it wasn't a misunderstanding. You really read my books." "People don't need to know that." Lily stopped. "You're going to lie?" "I'm going to protect my business. By denying who you are. By denying a version of me that doesn't work in the corporate world." The silence that followed was different from the others. Heavier. Colder. "And what are you going to do about the book?" Lily asked. Archer didn't answer right away, but the decision was already made. "I'm going to suspend the release. Temporarily. Until things calm down." "You can't do that. I own the publisher. I can do whatever I want. You promised you wouldn't interfere with my story. That was before my life turned into a circus. Lily stared at him with an expression he had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was worse. It was disappointment. "I thought you had changed," she said quietly. "I can't afford to change." "Can't or won't?" Archer didn't answer. Lily grabbed her purse and walked to the door. "You know what's sad?" she said without turning around. "You spent an entire week learning how to be human. And at the first real test, you chose to be a machine again." "Lily? Good luck with your investors, Archer. I hope it's worth it." The door closed. Archer stood alone in the apartment. Mr. Darcy watched him from the corner with that sad expression basset hounds always have. The phone kept vibrating. The world kept demanding answers. Archer had chosen control. He had chosen safety. But as he stared at the door Lily had walked through, he wondered if he had just lost something far more valuable. And the worst part was that he didn't know how to get it back. The productivity app started working perfectly again. Alarms at 6 in the morning, coffee at 6:15, exercise at 6:30, every minute calculated, organized, under control. Archer hated every second of it. It had been a week since Lily left. A week since he suspended the book's release. A week since he chose to be a machine instead of a human being. The press had calmed down. The investors stopped calling. The stock stabilized. Everything went back to normal. Except nothing felt normal. Mr. Darcy was lying in the corner of the room, watching Archer with those sad dog eyes that looked like they had seen too much. The basset hound had stayed. Lily said he needed company, and Archer didn't have the courage to argue. Now the dog was the only witness to Archer's quiet collapse. "Stop looking at me like that," Archer said. Mr. Darcy sighed and kept looking. "I made the right choice. It was business or feelings. I couldn't have both." The dog yawned. "You don't understand finance." Mr. Darcy got up, walked over to Archer, and lay down at his feet. It was the most emotional support a basset hound could offer. Archer turned back to the computer. He had reports to review, numbers to analyze, decisions to make. He opened the first document. Read the first line. Read it again. Nothing sank in. He closed it. He opened another one. Same result. Without realizing it, his hand went to the hidden drawer, the one he swore he would never open again. His fingers found the cover of the 4th volume of Hearts of Asphalt. "Just a few pages," he murmured. To relax. 2 hours later, he had reread half the book. Daniel was at the chapter where he finally admitted his feelings for Elena. After 3 books of running, hiding, pretending he didn't feel anything, the character looked at her and said, "I spent my whole life building walls to protect myself. But you didn't try to climb the walls. You just sat outside and waited. And when I finally opened the door, you were still there." Archer closed the book. His throat felt strangely tight. "It's just fiction," he told Mr. Darcy. "It doesn't mean anything." The dog gave a weak little growl like he was bored. "It doesn't mean anything," Archer repeated with less conviction. The intercom buzzed. "Margaret, Mr. Vance, the board meeting starts in 30 minutes. "I'm coming." "And sir?" "What? Are you okay? Your voice sounds strange." "I'm perfectly fine, if you say so." Archer stood up, adjusted his tie, and looked at the mirror. The reflection showed a man in a flawless suit, perfect posture, controlled expression. It also showed a man who hadn't slept right in a week, who hadn't eaten right in a week, who hadn't felt anything right in a week. "You're pathetic," he told the reflection. The reflection agreed in silence. The board meeting was exactly like every other one. Charts, numbers, projections, everyone talking about growth, expansion, profits. No one asked how he was doing. No one asked if he was happy. Happiness didn't show up in quarterly reports. "Mr. Vance?" The CFO's voice cut through his thoughts. "Do you agree with the proposal?" "What proposal?" "To sell the publisher. Since the acquisition caused so much controversy. Sell the publisher. Sell Asphalt Hearts. Sell any connection that still existed to Lily." "No," Archer said. "No? We're not selling." "But sir, the numbers suggest—" "I know what the numbers suggest. The answer is still no." The board members exchanged looks. Archer ignored them. After the meeting, he went back to his office, sat in his chair, stared at the wall. He stayed like that for almost an hour. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He took a sheet of paper, a pen, and he started to write. It wasn't a report. It wasn't an analysis. It wasn't anything that could be measured or calculated. It was a letter. "Lily, I spent my whole life believing control was the only way to survive. That if I could predict everything, calculate everything, organize everything, nothing could hurt me. But you showed me that some things can't be controlled. And that maybe that isn't a bad thing. I read your books because they made me feel something I couldn't feel in real life. Daniel and Elena had what I wanted, but was afraid to go after. I tried to change the ending because I couldn't stand the idea of losing something I loved, even if it was fiction, even if it wasn't mine. You were right, about everything. I am a stiff robot, a tractor in a suit, a man who is afraid to be human. But for the first time in my life, I want to change that. I don't know if you will forgive me. I don't know if I deserve to be forgiven, but I needed you to know. You made me want to be better. And that is more than anyone has ever done. Archer stopped writing, reread the letter, almost threw it in the trash, but something stopped him. Mr. Darcy had walked into the office at some point and was now sitting beside him, staring at the paper. What do you think? Archer asked. The dog licked his hand. I'll take that as approval. Archer folded the letter and put it in his pocket. He didn't know if he would send it. He didn't know if it would make a difference. But for the first time in weeks, he felt like he had done something real. His phone buzzed, a notification from the productivity app. Literary event, unfinished release of Asphalt Hearts, L.J. Rose confirmed. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Archer looked at the notification, looked at the letter in his pocket, looked at Mr. Darcy. This is a terrible idea, he said. The dog wagged his tail for the first time since he had arrived. A terrible idea, Archer repeated. But he was already grabbing his car keys. Some decisions couldn't wait until they made sense. The auditorium was packed, 300 people waiting for an ending that didn't exist. Lily stepped onto the stage with the unfinished manuscript in her hands. She had spent the past week rewriting, trying to find the right words. But every time she reached the last chapter, her mind went back to the same place. To him. Good evening, she said into the microphone. Thank you for being here. The audience applauded. Lily waited for the silence to return. You came to hear the ending of Asphalt Hearts, and I need to be honest with you. She took a deep breath. The ending doesn't exist yet. A murmur ran through the auditorium. People looked at each other, confused. Someone in the third row asked out loud if it was a joke. It's not a joke, Lily continued. I spent 4 years writing this series, 4 years living with Daniel and Elena. I knew exactly how the story would end. I had everything planned. She paused, but something changed, someone changed, and suddenly the ending I had written didn't feel true anymore. The audience went silent. Lily looked down at the manuscript in her hands. I've always said I write endings that need to exist, not endings people want. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe some endings need to be discovered, not planned. She lifted her eyes to the crowd. So tonight, instead of reading the ending, I'm going to read the second to last chapter. And then we'll see what happens. Lily opened the manuscript and began to read. Daniel and Elena's story filled the auditorium. Two people who had spent years running from each other. Two hearts too afraid to admit what they felt. The audience was hypnotized. Some people cried quietly, others held their breath. Lily reached the end of the second to last chapter. Elena looked at Daniel one last time. There was so much to say, so much that had never been said. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Some things are too big to fit into sentences. Daniel took a step forward, then he stopped. The silence between them was deafening. And then Lily closed the manuscript. And then nothing, she said, because this is where the story stops. The auditorium erupted in protests. You can't stop there. Where's the ending? This is emotional torture. Lily smiled sadly. I know, believe me, I know, but I can't write an ending I don't feel. And now, she stopped speaking. Something was happening at the back of the auditorium. The doors had opened. A figure stood in the entrance, lit by the hallway light. Archer Vance. The murmur that ran through the audience was immediate. Phones went up, flashes fired. Someone shouted, "It's the romantic billionaire." Archer ignored it all. He walked down the center aisle with steady steps, his eyes fixed on the stage. In his right hand he held a few sheets of paper. Lily froze. "What are you doing here?" she asked into the microphone, her voice trembling slightly. Archer reached the foot of the stage. "I came to deliver something." "Archer? Please," he said, "let me speak." Lily didn't answer. Archer climbed the steps to the stage and stopped beside her. The entire audience held its breath. "I know you don't want to see me," he said, his voice low, almost just for her. "And I understand. I did everything wrong. Absolutely everything. You suspended my book, I know. You betrayed me. I know. You chose your image instead of, I know." Archer cut her off. "And I spent the last week trying to understand why." He looked at the pages in his hand. "You asked me once why I wanted to change the ending. Why I cared so much about fictional characters." Lily nodded in silence. "I didn't know how to answer then, but now I do." Archer turned to the audience, 300 people staring at him, phones recording, the whole world about to see what he would do. "My name is Archer Vance," he said into the microphone. "And yes, I read romance novels. I've been reading them in secret for 6 years. I have 27 books in a safe behind a painting I pretend to like. And Hearts of Asphalt is the best series I've ever read in my life." A shocked silence took over the auditorium. "I wanted to change the ending because I was afraid," Archer continued. "Afraid of losing Daniel and Alina. Afraid of seeing two people I loved being separated. Because if they couldn't end up together, then maybe no one could." He looked at Lily. "But I was wrong. Endings can't be controlled. Not in books and not in life." Archer lifted the pages. "I spent the whole night writing. It's not a real chapter. It's not worthy of being in your book, but it's the most honest thing I've ever written." "Archer, you don't have to." "I do," he cut her off. "For the first time in my life, I need to do something without calculating the outcome." He took a deep breath and began to read. Daniel stood in the doorway, not knowing whether he should come in or walk away. His whole life, he had built walls of numbers, schedules, and rules only he understood. Walls that kept him safe. But safe from what? Elena was on the other side, waiting, the way she had always waited. She never tried to break down the walls. She never demanded that he change. She simply stayed, patient, present, real. Daniel took a step forward. "I'm afraid," he said. "I know," Elena replied. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be vulnerable. Nobody knows. We learn together. And if I mess up, you will mess up, so will I. But messing up together is better than getting it right alone." Daniel closed his eyes. The control he had held for so many years began to slip through his fingers. It was terrifying. It was freeing. "I love you," he said. "I should have said it a long time ago." Elena smiled. "I know. I always knew." "Then why did you wait?" "Because some things need to be discovered, not forced. And you needed to discover it on your own." Daniel finally understood. Love was not control. Love was choice. Choosing to show up even when it was hard. Choosing to be vulnerable even when it hurt. Choosing someone every day, not because it was easy, but because it was true. He walked through the door. Alina was waiting on the other side. And for the first time in his life, Daniel didn't try to calculate what came next. He simply lived. Archer finished reading. The silence in the auditorium was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. He lowered the pages and looked at Lily. "This isn't for the book," he said. "This is for you." Lily had tears in her eyes. "Archer, I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know." He made a move to step down from the stage. "Wait." Lily's voice stopped him. She walked up to him. She stopped less than a step away. "You wrote a happy ending," she said. "I tried." "Why?" "Because for the first time, I believe happy endings are possible." The silence lasted a few more seconds. Then Lily did something no one expected. She took the microphone and turned to the audience. "I think I just found my ending." And before Archer could respond, she kissed him. The auditorium exploded in applause. The kiss on stage lasted exactly 8 seconds. Archer knew because someone in the audience timed it and posted it online. The video went viral in less than an hour. "Romantic billionaire wins over author live" was the kindest headline. The others ranged from "a twist worthy of a romance" to "someone tell his productivity app that the heart doesn't follow a schedule." Archer didn't care about any of them. For the first time in his life, he had more important things to do than read news about himself. "You know they're going to talk about this for months, right?" Lily said when they finally got out of the auditorium, escaping reporters and emotional fans. "I know. And you're okay with that?" Archer thought about the question. He thought about his reputation, the investors, the board. "I am," he said, surprised by his own answer. "What happens to the polished robot?" "He's still here. He just learned to turn off once in a while." Lily laughed, that real laugh Archer had learned to love. The months that followed were chaotic in the best possible way. Archer kept the publishing house. Not only kept it, he invested more. The last book in Asphalt Hearts came out 3 months after the event with a completely new ending. Daniel and Elena ended up together. The literary critics said it was too predictable. The reader said it was perfect. It sold 2 million copies in the first month. Archer read the entire book in one night. He cried in the last chapter. Lily pretended not to notice. "You're sniffling," she said from the bed. "It's allergies. Allergic to happy endings? Allergic to dust." That book was dusty. "I gave you that copy 3 hours ago." Fast dust. The basset hound, who now officially slept in their bed, lifted his head and looked at Archer with an expression that clearly said, "You're not fooling anyone." Their life found a strange, comfortable rhythm. Archer still used the productivity app, but now it had a new category: time to do nothing. Lily still wrote late into the night, but now she had someone to bring tea and make comments about her characters. "You can't make the main character in the new book a cold businessman who falls for an author," Archer protested one night, reading over her shoulder. "Why not?" "Because it's obviously based on me." "It's not based on you. The character is named Nathan Lance. It's an anagram of Archer Vance." "No, it isn't." "Lily, I know how to do math." "Fine, maybe it's lightly inspired." "Lightly. Readers will love it. Readers will know it's me." "And does that bother you?" Archer thought for a moment. "No, I just want the right to approve the cover." 6 months after the kiss on stage, Archer did something his old self would never have considered. He asked Lily to marry him. No elaborate planning. No reservations at expensive restaurants. No rings hidden in champagne glasses. They were sitting on the living room floor eating pizza, with the furry one trying to steal a slice like he always did. "Marry me," Archer said out of nowhere. Lily stopped chewing. "What?" "Marry me." "Now?" "Not now. At some point. When you want, if you want." "Is this a proposal?" "Apparently." "You don't have a ring. I can buy a ring." "You're not on one knee." "I can get on one knee." "You're covered in tomato sauce." "Is that relevant?" Lily looked at him, at the tomato sauce, at the dog who had finally managed to steal a slice and was now chewing happily in the corner. "Yes," she said. "Yes, as in it's relevant, or yes, as in you accept?" "Yes, I accept, you idiot." Archer smiled, the kind of smile he didn't know he was capable of until he met Lily. "You called me an idiot." "You proposed covered in tomato sauce." "Idiot" is affectionate. The wedding was set for 3 months later. Margaret almost had a breakdown when Archer said he didn't want an event planner. "Mr. Vance, weddings need organization. Lists. Schedules. Vendors." "I know." "Then why don't you want a planner?" "Because Lily said she prefers something simple." "Simple how?" "Simple like, I don't know. We'll find out." Margaret looked at him like he had announced he was moving to the moon. "Are you okay, sir?" "I've never been better, Margaret." They found the perfect place by accident. Lily was scouting locations for a scene in her new book when she discovered a small, old bookstore on the outskirts of the city. It had a garden in the back, full of wildflowers and old trees. The inside walls were covered with wooden shelves, and the smell of old books filled every corner. "Here," she said, showing the photos to Archer. "For the book?" "For the wedding." Archer looked at the photos. It wasn't an elegant venue. It wasn't a 5-star hotel. It wasn't anything he would have chosen a year ago. It was perfect. "Here," he agreed. The wedding day arrived on an October afternoon. The bookstore garden was decorated with tiny lights hanging from the trees. The tables had stacks of their favorite books as centerpieces. The makeshift altar was surrounded by wooden shelves full of old romance novels. Simple chairs formed 2 short rows. There were no more than 50 guests. Archer stood at the altar, trying not to look nervous. "You're shaking," the officiant observed, a friend of Lily's who had a license to perform weddings. "I'm not. Your hands are shaking. It's the wind." "There is no wind." "Then it's healthy anxiety." On the other side of the garden, the music started. It wasn't the traditional wedding march. It was a song Lily loved from an old movie they had watched together. And then she appeared. Lily was wearing a simple dress that suited her perfectly. Her hair was down, something she rarely did, and beside her, on a leash decorated with flowers, was the 4-legged companion who had become part of the family. The basset hound walked with the dignity of someone who knew he was the real main character of that story. "She brought the dog," Margaret murmured from the front row. "Of course she did," Archer replied without taking his eyes off Lily. Lily reached the altar. The furry one sat beside them, yawning. "You came," Archer said. "I said I would. I know, but still." "Still what?" "Still thank you." Lily smiled. "You're welcome, tractor in a suit." The ceremony was short and full of imperfections. The officiant forgot part of the text and had to improvise. The dog barked at the wrong moment. One of the guests sneezed during the vows. Nothing went as planned. Everything went exactly as it should. When it was time for the vows, Archer pulled a paper from his pocket. "I wrote a few things," he said. "You wrote vows?" He looked surprised. "You're the man who used to time every meeting down to the second. Handwritten vows seem human." "I'm learning." Archer unfolded the paper. "Lily, you walked into my life by spilling coffee on my suit and walked out calling me a pressed and polished robot. In that moment, I hated you a little." Laughter from the guests. "But you did something no one had ever done. You saw me, not the businessman, not the billionaire, not the image I built to protect myself. You saw the man under all of it. And for some reason I still don't understand, you decided to stay." Lily had tears in her eyes. "I spent my whole life controlling every detail because I was afraid. Afraid of losing. Afraid of making mistakes. Afraid of feeling. You showed me that fear doesn't disappear, but we can choose to live anyway." He put the paper away. "I don't know what the future holds. I don't have charts, projections, or apps that can tell me. But for the first time, that doesn't scare me. Because any future with you is a future I want to live." Lily wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. "My turn." She didn't have paper. She didn't have anything written. Archer Vance. "I spent my whole life creating stories about people who find love, but I never imagined my own story would look like this." She held his hands. "You surprise me every day. The way you try to cook and always burn something. The way you read my drafts and pretend you didn't cry. The way you organize spices in alphabetical order and think I didn't notice." Soft laughter from the guests. "I love you not in spite of who you are, but because of who you are. Every part of you. Even the parts you're still learning to accept." She squeezed his hands. "You taught me that people can change, and I promise to spend the rest of my life writing new chapters of this story. With you." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Archer kissed Lily as the guests applauded. The basset hound howled. The reception happened right there, between the bookcases and the lights in the garden. Simple food, soft music, people talking without rushing. At some point, Archer stepped away and watched the scene from a distance. Lily dancing with her father, the dog getting petted by all the guests, Margaret laughing at some joke. Mrs. Betty and Mr. Osvaldo had come. The bingo man who almost exposed him was there too, now telling everyone he knew he was a good guy from the start. It was messy, imperfect, completely outside of any schedule. It was the most beautiful thing Archer had ever seen. Lily walked up to him. "What are you thinking about?" "About how I almost lost all of this." "But you didn't." "But I almost did." She rested her head on his shoulder. "You know what I learned from writing stories?" "What?" "That the best endings aren't the perfect ones. They're the true ones." Archer smiled. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and opened his productivity app. "What are you doing?" Lily asked, creating one last event. He typed for a few seconds and showed her the screen. Event, be happy with Lily, duration, forever. Repeat every day. Lily laughed with tears in her eyes. "You're very insightful. I learned from the best." Archer looked at her, at the garden full of books, at the life he never planned but still found anyway. He spent years trying to control the financial market, predict every variable, calculate every outcome. But he discovered that the only story worth living is the one we write without a draft. "That's a good ending," he said. Lily smiled. "It's not an ending. It's just the start of a new chapter." And for the first time in his life, Archer didn't try to calculate what would come next. He simply lived. Who would have thought that spilled coffee and a grumpy dog would be the big matchmakers in this story? Archer learned the hard way that happiness doesn't show up in financial reports. But I want to know what you think. Do you think Lily was too hard on him? Or did he really need that shock to change? And would you have Archer's courage to give up everything for a week to prove your love? If you like this happy ending, leave your like and tell me down below which character you loved meeting the most. A big hug, and I'll see you in the next story.